In today's episode, we are going to be addressing the modern parenting dilemma about their child's sleep. Whether you should go with gentle sleep approach or go with sleep training.
What are these different approaches? What do they even mean?
The gentle sleep approach somehow just seems more lucrative, but the problem is that it's also something that a parent needs to be very, very patient with. This can take a long time, and if you're at the brink of breaking down under the pressure of sleep deprivation, then sleep training can suddenly seem a lot more lucrative. No, your child is not going to turn out to be some detached psychopath who hates you just because you have done sleep training. Nor, if you follow the gentle sleep approach, is your child is going to be clingy baby who's being rocked to sleep till they go to college. I think a lot of fear that is stopping parents from making the right decision is because of this fear mongering that is done on Instagram.
Hey parents, welcome to another episode of the Modern Indian Parent Podcast, a podcast that is redefining parenting in Indian families. I'm Sanchita Daswani, a child nutritionist.
And I am Rinie Gupta, a pediatric sleep consultant. And every week we bring you new episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. So be sure to subscribe and follow on the platform of your choice. In today's episode, we are going to be solving and addressing the modern parenting dilemma about their child's sleep. Whether you should go with a gentle sleep approach or go with sleep training. We are going to deep dive into what are the exact differences between these two approaches and how to figure out which is a right one for your family. But let me tell you, if you are here to get a clear-cut answer about which approach is better and which approach is the bad one, this is not what you're going to get in this episode. In this episode, we are trying to break down the salient differences and similarities between them so that you can make an informed decision about which approach is better for your family. And as a sleep consultant myself, who is certified and experienced with sleep training, as well as holistic and gentle sleep practices, I cannot wait to share this information with you.
Okay, Rinie, so let's get into it because when it comes to sleep, you've mentioned these terms. And for a parent who's just starting out, they've just had a baby, it can be a bit confusing and overwhelming with all these different sleep terms. So first of all, can you clarify for us when it comes to sleep with babies, what are these different approaches? What are these names and what do they even mean?
Thanks for asking me that, Sanchita, because you're right. There's a lot of confusion around what does sleep training really mean and what does gentle sleep really mean, because these can mean different things to different people. Sleep training, if we go by the definition of what is being used by researchers that are like right into this whole infant sleep science, is they define sleep training as a process of helping your child how to learn to sleep independently. And that means without needing the rocking, nursing, patting, and majority of the time, sleep-trained babies are sleeping in their own cribs or own beds. So this is the sleep training part of it. The gentle sleep part of it is you are still assisting your child to sleep in some or the other way. And what you're doing is that you're working more towards just optimizing your child's sleep without using any behavioral techniques. So this is what gentle sleep kind of entails overall.
So when you mention what both mean, for me as a parent, I suddenly am gravitating more towards the gentle sleep because it sounds gentle. And when you're saying sleep training, it sounds a little bit rigid. So as a new parent, wouldn't most of us just want to go ahead with this gentle approach because it just seems it's so much more easier for the parent and the baby?
Actually, you make a lot of sense, especially in Indian families. Sleep training is never our default. Unlike a lot of the families in the US, in Australia, where sleep training is a rite of passage. Like the baby turns 4 or 5 months old, they do sleep training. Everybody does it, whether or not the child is facing sleep issues in the first place. In Indian families, on the other hand, majority of us are trying to work with gentle sleep methods and then seeing are they really having an impact on the child's sleep or does the sleep continue to be just as bad? Then we gravitate towards and start exploring sleep training. But really, the biggest difference that I want parents to know between sleep training and gentle sleep is using the example of a soothing ladder. All right. So I want you to envision that when you are trying to settle a child to sleep, okay, there is this soothing ladder in which at the top of the ladder is the most amount of support that you can provide to a child, which honestly is feeding to sleep. Whether you're bottle feeding or breastfeeding, feeding to sleep is the highest level of support you can provide because you are providing the sucking to soothe association, you're holding them, there's some movement involved, and that is right at the top of the ladder. When you come one step lower without the feeding, if you just do rocking, that is one step lower. One step lower than that is contact sleep, whether you could be patting them or just holding them. One step lower is just verbal reassurance, where you could be singing or shushing to them. A step lower than that is just presence, where you just need to be present in the same room as your child while they're falling asleep. And then the last and the bottommost step is independent sleep. Now, when you look at content of a lot of sleep consultants, let's say, who are following the gentle sleep approach, many of them are still talking about how to come down this soothing ladder. Okay, many of them are talking about, okay, how can we stop feeding to sleep? Or if you would like to stop rocking to sleep, then how do you go about it? And sleep training consultants are talking about the exact same thing. So then what's the difference? Honestly, it comes down to the pace at which you come down this ladder. When it comes to sleep training, you are right. We do follow such certain behavioral modification methods that makes us come down the ladder rather quickly. To go from feeding to sleep to absolutely at the bottom of the ladder, independent sleep, this can happen in a matter of 3 days. 3 to 5 days is typically what it takes for a baby to really adapt to sleep training, and it is possible and it has no negative impact on the baby. However, the reality is that when you come down this ladder that quickly, it is going to be a steep learning curve for the baby. And when there's a steep learning curve, you can imagine they are going to be upset about it. They are going to protest and say, no, I would rather be fed to sleep. I would rather be rocked to sleep. But it subsides very quickly. And this protesting will come out in the form of tears. Okay, which is why one of the key differences between sleep training and the gentle sleep approach is that in sleep training, there is definitely more crying involved. Now, this crying is very short term. Don't mistake me on the fact that this crying has to last for months and months or weeks on end. It is very short term, it's just a few days, but there is more crying involved. On the other hand, with gentle sleep, you are coming down this ladder, going from feeding to sleep to rocking to sleep to contact sleep. You're doing this slowly. You could be doing this over a matter of few days or weeks or even months. And you completely take your baby's lead in this. You try to introduce a small change, see if they're okay with it. If they are not, you go back up the ladder and you keep going this back and forth and you really slowly climb down this ladder. That's why it's more of a gentle sleep approach. In this approach, you typically don't face a lot of tears. And even if you do, it's very short term and it's very mild levels of tears. I don't think that gentle sleep approach is a completely tear-free approach, but still, we know that in the gentle sleep approach, you will definitely face lesser crying. So I hope, Sanchita, that answers your question in terms of you're right that nobody wants their baby to cry. And that's why the gentle sleep approach somehow just seems more lucrative. It seems more preferable. But the problem is that it's also something that a parent needs to be very, very patient with. They need to understand that this can take a long time. And if you're at the brink of exhaustion, you're at the brink of just, breaking down under the pressure of sleep deprivation, then sleep training can suddenly start to seem a lot more lucrative.
Right. So the goal is the same, that eventually we want our kids to sleep on their own. But how you get there, how fast you get there depends on which method you choose. So my question now is, why do we even need to get to the bottom of this ladder? What is the point of it?
Absolutely. I think it makes a lot of sense that, like, why can't we just continue rocking baby to sleep or continue feeding baby to sleep? Why are we even trying to make our way down the ladder to provide lesser assistance for sleep? And the answer lies in understanding a baby's sleep cycles. Okay. So a baby sleeps in cycles of about 45 minutes. I think this has become common knowledge thanks to Instagram now. But what a lot of parents may not understand is that babies have wakings at the end of sleep cycles. Okay. Sometimes it's a very smooth waking and they go right into the next sleep cycle. But after every 2 or 3 cycles, very commonly babies fully wake up and now they need that assistance from you to go back to sleep. Okay. Now, when a child is right at the top of the soothing ladder, all right, which means they are feeding to sleep or rocking to sleep, that means there's a lot more work that needs to be put in from the parent's side to be able to get them back to sleep. So imagine you're rocking them to sleep at 7 p.m., but you're doing it again at 9, then again at 11, after that again at 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And that can become really, really difficult for a parent. Whereas if there is a baby who is either falling asleep dependently or with very minimal support from the parent, they are able to cruise through the sleep cycles much more easily. And what I mean by that is, let's say if a child is sleeping independently, that means it's a sleep trained baby. They wake up, they're like, okay, I fell asleep on my own. I'm exactly where I fell asleep. I can just go right back to sleep. I don't need anybody to come in to rock me, feed me, or do any of those things, unless I'm hungry, of course. And then they keep connecting sleep cycles all night long and sleep through the night. Whereas if there's a baby who maybe only needs a little bit of shushing or patting, again, that's a lot easier on the parent, right? Instead of getting up to rock and feed. So maybe you just lie next to the baby and you just shush them, you put your hand on them a little bit and they go right back to sleep. So that's the whole point. It actually makes it easier for parents to settle babies to sleep and the middle of the night for all these night wakings. If you come down the ladder and if you come right down to independent sleep, oh my God, that is the game changer in terms of helping babies just sleep through the night, like without having any big, loud crying wakings at all. So that's the whole point of it. That's why we are trying to come down the soothing ladder to be able to make sleep a easier process for the parents and help babies get more consolidated sleep.
So I remember for my kids, like honestly, they were quite okay. Like I used to do the gentle sleep. I used to go in, I used to pat them a bit. They used to go back. It wasn't troubling us a lot. But then it suddenly happened that when they were like 1.5, then it just kind of became so so exhausting. It was almost like those gentle sleep approaches didn't work anymore. And they were up a lot more. And that's when I decided to do sleep training. So my question then is following a gentle sleep approach eventually going to have to make you do sleep training in the end, or can it actually be a long-term thing with gentle sleep and they'll be okay?
So I think, again, this all goes back to every parent's goal and every parent's preference. Okay. If a family's goal and preference is for the child to be able to sleep through the night, okay, then sleep training is a better approach for them. However, when it comes to gentle sleep, we have to be okay with the fact that it may reduce night wakings, but it may never really take them away entirely. And it's possible that, when it comes to regressions and things like that, it may really throw a wedge in your child's sleep habits. That can happen for sleep trained babies as well, but I do see with the gentle sleep approach, parents need to accept the fact that they are going to go through these like curves of ups and downs in their child's sleep habits. So if you ask me, most parents in the Indian community, they are following the gentle sleep approach first. They see for how long it's working. And if there is a point where it starts to get too challenging for them, for example, you had twin babies who were being rocked to sleep. I remember you shared with me after a certain point, and having twin babies up multiple times at night, being rocked to sleep, that becomes really challenging. Then in that scenario, sleep training became a better approach for you. So I don't think there is any better approach in the sense. It's just about how challenging it is at this point in time and what approach will help you to make things less challenging. And I really want to point out something, and this is something that a lot of people don't discuss, is we'll keep talking about how every baby is different. Everybody loves to say that every baby is different. They all learn at their own pace. They all have their own individual personalities and strengths and weaknesses. Can we take a moment to talk about how every parent is very different as well? There could be one mom who is up 5 times at night and still feel completely okay the next day because she just has a higher tolerance for sleep deprivation. Maybe she has more opportunities to rest in the day, so she's able to do that. Maybe she has a different support system. And there is one mom who could be up 2 times at night and still feel like she's in absolute shambles the next day and feel absolutely dysfunctional the next day. Or there is this mom who has no support system, no village to rely on. So there are different circumstances that parents are living in. And that's why you can't just say that, okay, only if your child is waking up like 5 times at night, is when you should do sleep training. But if it's only like 2 times at night, then sleep training is not for you. But why is that? I think it really goes back to understanding what is going to work for you as a family to be happier, right? Because let's be real, both these approaches are good approaches if it allows your family to be well rested, whether you're doing gentle sleep or you're doing sleep training.
Yeah, I remember whenever I sometimes discuss with you about my clients and their sleep schedule, I'm like, is it okay? And one of the things you say often is that honestly, if it's working for the parents and the baby, then don't change anything. Because sometimes parents keep thinking, should I drop this? Should I do this? And I think that answer kind of also sums up what you were just saying. So it really depends on the situation and what works best and what is, as you said, everyone is so different. So I have so many friends who are very not into sleep training and and there are many friends who are very pro it. So it depends again. And I do want to ask you about a lot of these terms that come up with sleep. We have wake windows, we have the bedtime routine, and dream feeds, and all of these terms. Now, do they apply for both methods, or are they only for when we are actually looking at proper sleep training or gentle sleep?
All right. So when it comes to looking at schedules, sleep environment, wake windows, all of these things are a part of, you can say, neither and both approaches. If you're trying to establish a good schedule for your baby, if you're trying to create a sleep conducive environment for your baby, if you're trying to establish a steady bedtime routine for your baby, these are elements of basic sleep hygiene. Okay. It's not about whether you're going to then take the next step to sleep train your baby or you're going to take the next step to gently change their habits. No matter what you decide, these are basic sleep hygiene steps that you have to take. All right. Let's say if you are planning to work with a professional, whether they are a gentle sleep consultant or they're a sleep training expert, any sleep consultant worth their salt will guide you through getting the right routine, the right schedules, the right feeding, the right sleep environment in place. Okay? No matter what approach you decide. So don't think that sleep training can work without a schedule or the gentle sleep approach is just about having a good schedule. So it's really a part of both approaches. And I would tell this to parents that please make sure that you are not, let's say, especially for sleep training, using it like a band aid. Because I tell parents, you cannot sleep train a baby out of hunger. You cannot sleep train a baby out of a poor schedule. You cannot sleep train a baby out of having a really bad like sleep environment, that is not conducive for sleep. You can't do all of those things. You need to establish those things before you consider sleep training or any other form of sleep change. So yeah, I hope that answers your question in terms of it is both actually.
Okay, so when it comes to both these approaches, we've spoken about the benefits of them and how parents will find it quite attractive to follow either or. But are there downsides to these approaches?
Very interesting question. So I think the main thing that I will tell parents is that neither approach is harmful, because that is something that parents are always looking out for, is that if I follow one or the other approach, is it going to harm my baby in any way? Not at all. For example, when it comes to sleep training, no, your child is not going to turn out to be some detached psychopath who hates you just because you have done sleep training. Nor if you follow the gentle sleep approach, is your child is going to be turned out to some clingy baby who's being rocked to sleep till they go to college. I think a lot of the fear that is stopping parents from making the right decision is because of this fear mongering that is done on Instagram, where, there could be not very unethical sleep training experts who are kind of fear mongering parents in the other direction and telling them that, like, if you don't do sleep training, your baby will never sleep well again, which is false. And on the other side, you have these gentle sleep experts or other mom influencers who don't want to do sleep training. They are fear mongering parents in the other side, where they are saying that if you do sleep training, then your child is going to end up detached, your child is going to have learned helplessness, and that is also false. This fear mongering on the internet really needs to stop. And what we need to look at is data backed findings about both of these approaches. And really, when you go back and look at the data, you will find that both of these approaches, in the long run, have the same impact on the child, which means there is no difference in attachment. There is no difference in emotional regulation. There is no difference in any of these things, whether you choose to co-sleep and gentle sleep and rock and feed to sleep, or you choose to do sleep training. In the long run, there is no impact. So you can actually, with a lot of peace of mind, make this choice. So if you ask me, are there any downsides of it from the perspective of will it cause harm? Zero. Nah. Okay. However, the other two downsides that I do like to talk about in both to actually help parents make an informed decision is with sleep training. In a way, the downside is the crying. Okay. And I'm a mom first before I became a sleep consultant. When I sleep trained my baby, I remember the first night took 24 minutes. That night is something I will not forget because it was really tough. The next night was lesser, the next night was lesser. But sometimes I still think about those 24 minutes. This has been 3.5 years, okay, since this happened. My baby is sleeping excellently. She's so attached to me. She's blossoming to this wonderful person. But the crying was still a hard part. And I always acknowledge that. So that is one downside of it. But I also kind of reason with myself, and I do explain to the families I'm working with, is that this is short term. It doesn't have any impact on the baby in the long run. And we just are making this short term compromise to get this like long term good sleep that we all need as a family. So that's the downside of sleep training. When it comes to gentle sleep, the downside is basically what you brought out earlier, the unpredictability and the fact that this night wakings may never really settle for a while. Okay. Like, for example, if you're following the gentle sleep approach, I am never going to be able to say to you that, like, okay, at this age, your child would not have night wakings anymore. Because there is no way to predict that. Okay. We just need to be okay with the fact that night wakings may continue to happen at whatever frequency till whatever age. And this uncertainty and the fact that night wakings may still persist can be a downside for a lot of parents who are really looking to be in a place where their child can sleep through the night and they can sleep through the night. And that is just what their goal is. So I think it's about making an informed choice in terms of what is more important to you, whether it's the complete avoidance of tears or whether it is trying to get like that consolidated sleep for your child. And then once you kind of make that decision, then you commit to it and you make that change. So I think that is what I would tell parents to consider very strongly when they're trying to decide which approach to go for.
Yeah, when you explain it, it makes so much sense. But when you go on Instagram and social media, there's just this like all these different approaches and just the way people feel so strongly about it. Because the reason they're posting about it is they feel very strongly and they're trying to create some type of fear that if you choose a certain way, it's bad or it's good. Why is this so prevalent? Why are these strong opinions so out there?
Because strong opinions drives clicks. That's what it is. When you have content that is vanilla, what is saying that like, okay, this is good, but this can also be good. Nobody wants to share it. Nobody wants to like it. Nobody wants to post about it. But the very moment you start coming in with very strong opinions, you start creating this like people who like really strongly agree with you. And then they will like aggressively share your content and make it go viral. And that is the problem with social media and even like news articles. There was this very interesting article that I came across that said 30 years of research proves that sleep training damages babies. I read that article and I was just like, oh my God, what is this landmark study that has taken over 30 years about sleep training that I have missed reading? Okay, my background is in biology. I did biological sciences for 4 years. I am crazy about reading research papers. I'm like, what is this study that I missed out? So I open up that article and turns out it's about no study at all. The 30 years of study that they're talking about is basically the combined experience of two psychotherapists one person has experience for 17 years, the other person has experience for 13 years, and it's their opinion that sleep training damages babies. You see the clickbait article? Like, how scary would that be for a person who's not a professional, who doesn't go and read research papers? Like, that article would freak them out. So that is a problem why sleep has become so polarized. But if you really go back and look at the data, there is no debate. There is really no debate. Both approaches are safe, both approaches are effective. You have to pick the right one for you. And one big part of it is people have also started just saying, like, you'll be like, but there are so many people who are, saying sleep training is bad, sleep training is bad, but they are saying research shows that. Research proves that. So don't they have research to back that claim as well? And you'll be very shocked to know that no, they don't. Okay. And for example, there's a very famous like Harvard study that talks about how sleep training or crying can lead to learned helplessness, where babies just stop crying and then they take that finding and then they apply it to sleep training and they say the reason baby stops crying is because they feel nobody's coming. But when you actually go back and look at that research, that is a study that was done in orphanages where babies have been institutionalized, they don't have proper care, they could be crying. These orphaned babies who are not being cared for, they're not being carried, they stop crying because that's true. Nobody's listening to them. So then they just kind of tone down that and they just internalize it. But when you're talking about our sleep trained babies, most of these babies are growing up in beautiful, loving households. Sleep training is a skill that they are learning. So, taking a finding from a study that was done in an orphanage and applying it to a baby who's growing up in a loving household, it doesn't make any sense. So, you could be using terms like research shows or this thing proves it. But that's not true because it's an overgeneralization of a study that wasn't even done on sleep. It wasn't even done on sleep training because the studies that were done on sleep training don't have this kind of a finding. All right. So I think it just goes back to understanding that if you're going to, what you're listening to, you have to differentiate whether this is a fact or somebody's opinion. And if it is just somebody's opinion, then you need to take a step back and really go and start looking for the facts instead.
So many times I keep sending you on Instagram all these articles about sleep, and every time you're able to debunk it for me. But it's like I see that headline, I'm like, oh my God, and I send it to you, and you're like, this is not proper research, it's not backed up, it's just someone's opinion. And they're just trying to get that click. So you're totally right. And that's why this episode is so helpful because it brings that clarity as well. Okay, so to round up this episode, what would be one final piece of advice you would like to give parents who want to make changes when it comes to sleep?
So, the thing with parents who are struggling with sleep is that all of us are going to have different goalposts. Okay. And what I would tell parents is that really evaluate what is it that you are looking for and find and follow the right approach based on that. Okay. Because you need to have that peace of mind that whatever approach you decide to follow, it is safe and it is effective. And if I lift this burden off your head, I'm sure you will have a lot more clarity in terms of making the decision about which approach to go for. The second thing that I would tell parents is that, as we discussed earlier, because of all these clickbaity content all over the place, it is very easy to get lost in the noise of it all, right? And if you are feeling like you want to cut through the noise, I would highly recommend that you talk to a professional. It could be your doctor. It could be a sleep consultant like me. It is really important to talk to someone about it, but also ensure that what they are trying to say, how they are guiding you, the goal they're trying to take you towards matches your own goals and preferences or not. And when you find that right fit is when you can work with that person and take their advice. Okay. Because the sleep world, it's true as it is very polarized. So first you need to decide where you stand in this spectrum and then find somebody to help you that matches your values, matches your goals. So this would be my final message to the parents who are watching this episode.
Yeah, amazing. Thanks for that. Actually, when I think about it now, like going through this whole episode with you, like for me personally, I would say that if I would ever have had another kid, I would have definitely, for example, considered sleep training earlier on. But again, that is my preference based on the pros and cons you mentioned for my family, for the fact that I need my sleep. I cannot function if I wake up. So yeah, it's everyone's preference. And I think this episode really helps people weigh that better and make that decision. And we'll link your details below as well if people want to chat with you further about deciding what is best for their baby and their family.
You're right, Sanchita. See, as like you said, babies differ, but parents differ as well. And thank you for bringing this out from your personal experience. And yes, I will put my links for my website down below for anybody who wants to get any kind of sleep support. And I hope you will get in touch and find the right answer that you're looking for. So thank you so much for joining us for this episode today. Please share this episode with a fellow parent who is stuck in this dilemma between gentle sleep and sleep training so that they can make the right informed decision for their family too. We'll see you in the next one.